Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. We thank you for tuning in. And Brandon, hello.
Aloha.
Hello. We are with our beautiful guest today, Moira Penn, and we are absolutely honored to have her on the show today. Before we get into talking with you, Moira, I just wanted to remind everybody that so our Sunday shows are our interview shows, as you guys can see. Wednesdays are our reading shows, so every Wednesday at 6 o'clock Mountain Time. And I also ask you guys to join in on a new channel that I'm a co-host of. It's called I Want to Believe, and this is we're interviewing actually elements of the paranormal. So it's going to be a different, just a different type of show. Also, if you guys want to book a personal reading with me, you can do so through oracleintuitions.com and or on my Facebook or my Instagram page at Oracle Intuitions. And Brandon?
If you want to book a reading with me, thedreamteacher.com. Go to the appointments tab, click on whatever day you want in the calendar, and you will be all set to go. It's pretty easy, a couple clicks and you're done. And then you have an hour or an hour and a half or 30 minutes of time with me. So if you're not sure what to do the free consultation. We can figure out what exactly time that you need. We'll pull out all the tools I have in my tool belt to get you where you're going. So thedreamteacher.com.
And I also wanted to wish a very happy Mother's Day to all the mummies out there.
Yes, happy
mummies,
Mother's Day.
Fur baby mummies, all of the mummies. Everybody's included in this one. Moira, we are so pleased to have you on the show. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, I'm actually just thrilled to have you on. So I'm just I just wanted to talk a little bit, to kind of give you an introduction here. So Moira is, she's a theater producer, director. She has her own podcast, The Refined Mettle. That's the correct name? Is that right?
Unrefined
Mettle. Unrefined Mettle.
And it's mettle, METTLE, which is how people that's the word to use to describe how people cope with things and process things.
Right. So, okay. I love that.
It's not like metal, like meddling around and getting into trouble.
Not meddling. It's not not metal.
I just wanted to say something to GA Peach. Thank you so much. She just said we'd be lost without you. You're such a sweetheart. Thank you for watching today. It's like that. What a complete honor to have you here. And that was just someone in our chat, and she said, what a great panel. So thank you again. Moira, you're also a practicing witch.
I am.
So one of the reasons why we started this show, and this was actually originally stemmed from Brandon's show back when he had a podcast, is to really talk about the community, the paranormal, the supernatural community, what is authentic, what isn't authentic. It was kind of a broadcast in a way to not, I don't know if we should say call out. Should we say call out? I don't know.
It wasn't to out people. It was to kind of just put a spotlight on things and allow people to see, one, to represent themselves and whomever they are or perceive themselves to be or project. But two, it is I know that what I do, in short, it's not to officially call out people, but I know that what I do is genuine, honest. I offer validation. I offer the things and techniques that I think all psychics should be able to do. And so it's a nice juxtaposition with, you have somebody who is genuine, who has people come to him from all over the world many times over, and then other people in comparison to see, okay, what does a good psychic make? So it wasn't to call anybody out, but in lack of a better term, to show your ass, and whether that ass was peachy keen or hairy, whatever it was.
I love the way that, yeah, exactly. And so we decided to, bring that element over onto this show as well. And so, I mean, you and I are very close personal friends. We've known each other for a long time. Moira is the real deal, people. and this is why I wanted to, talk with you and bring you on and explain to people and of course, this is going to be in your own words. You can't talk for others. We get that, right? But at the same time, to talk about that element of witchcraft and to, just explain that community, at least for you and your perspective of it. Namie, happy Mother's Day to you too, sweetie. Thank you for dropping in. So first of all, I want to talk about, let's talk about your background in theater and directing and, a little bit of, let's learn about you.
I did my first, I had my first acting gig when I was 3 years old. I signed up for it myself. I went over to a friend's house, lived across the street, and I simulated giving birth on their couch. So I
love it.
Right into the drama.
Right into the drama. Pretty relevant to Mother's Day. I don't know what it was. I did a lot of theater as a kid. I did a lot of pantomimes. I didn't grow up in Canada. So where I grew up, there was a huge British influence. So pantomime typically happens around Christmas. So I participated in those. And then I came back to Canada to go to university, and I went into theater. And then it just kind of went from there. And I was in Winnipeg going to university. And my husband and I decided to move to Edmonton. Better job opportunities. So there were a number of years when we had our kids where I didn't really participate in it, but then I found the Edmonton Fringe and a couple of theater companies in the city that I started working with. So I have an arts and cultural management diploma, which means that, I can do the administrative stuff as well as the stage stuff. And typically I find right now there's a really big shift in the culture of performing arts. Women have long since been forced into administrative roles, right? We're typically, the organizers and we get things done, we make the lists, we buy the supplies. And there's this real awakening of women in theater as more than just administrators. So with the pandemic, I think that's okay to say pandemic.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's open here.
It's open. Okay. I wasn't sure. I know you can get barred on certain things you're saying.
They haven't yet, but whatever, I'm good.
Okay. The pandemic, as we call it in this case, that halted theaters and just ripped it, performing arts, ripped it straight out of everybody's hands. So yeah, I don't know if that kind of gives you a background. Maybe.
It does. You also, so you have a podcast as well, right? You're starting back a podcast. Yeah. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So Unrefined Mettle was actually started in 2018 with my best friend, Kate. And she and I, for years, had been having conversations that were outside of the box as they relate to a lot of things. And for a long time, we would sit and we would sort of write things down, and then why let's just publish this. Let's just turn this into something. And podcasting seemed like kind of the logical thing to do. It's relatively budget friendly, if you will.
Right.
So we started Unrefined Mettle in 2018, and we've had guests. We've talked about paranormal. We've talked about Halloween. We talk about really taboo things. If it's all right to say, we're currently asking people to submit their craziest, most bizarre, sexy stories.
Ooh.
Like
Brendan's gonna have like 10 of them.
No, that's great. I think it's fantastic. I think, as a team, Kate and I are very sex positive. We're very open.
Yeah.
But I also think we're very respectful in how we present our opinions. So yeah, Unrefined Mettle Podcast.ca is where you'll find all kinds of stuff like that.
I want to actually put that into the shop.
Pulled up right now.
Just let me make sure it's not unrefinedmettle.ca. I think there's no podcast in it. That's the email address. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm so bad at this.
I see it's on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Listen Notes, Hubhopper.
So there's 33 episodes right now, and we're in the midst of producing.
I see the one, assholes are assholes.
Are you able to copy that link, Brandon, and put it in the chat? Okay, that would be great.
Thank you. That's really cool. You could do that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. So with the paranormal, like, how did you get into the paranormal?
Well, when I was putting together my little bio, I said that the first paranormal experience I ever had was the Berenstain Bears and the spooky old tree, which was given to me in a book with a cassette tape. And they read the story, and it had a lot of sound effects. And it was so scary. And it sort of flipped this little switch in me that all of a sudden I started picking out the noises that I couldn't explain.
Okay.
Right? Okay. If you will.
Yeah.
I remember distinctly, Kathy, at one of the meetings that I had met you at, standing outside with you and a group of women. And somebody said to me, "Oh, are you an empath?" And I was like, no. And a very distinct personality in the group spoke up and said, "Oh, she is. She's just not ready to admit it." I was like, what? So I do, like so many artists, and I think so many people in general, I suffer from imposter syndrome. So
what is that? Explain that.
That is feeling like when you're doing so as, say, empath or say actor or artist, if you're in a group of peers who have similar interests and skills, you think you're like, what am I doing here? Like, I shouldn't be here. I'm not good enough to be here. And it's a reality for so many of us, I think, right? In so many industries.
Yeah.
But I had joined a group here looking for perhaps some moments to learn a little bit more about it. And funny enough, in that group, I was immediately thrust into the administrative role.
I wonder who did that.
Now that I think about it, I was immediately thrust into the administrative role. And
I don't know who did that to you.
Oh, no, it wasn't you. It wasn't you. Because no, it was the group I was in before.
Okay, good.
But and then just finding this amazing community of people who had paranormal experiences, who had experiences with spirit that they couldn't explain, that they didn't know at the time they could define as having made some sort of connection with spirit. So, that, like, mind blown.
Yeah. I don't know. Brandon, thank you so much for putting that up. I appreciate it. Let's talk about witchcraft for a little bit.
Sure.
How did you get into that?
I
kind of want to, and I guess what would be your best description of, if you were to put it into something?
Kathy, I asked you if I could do anything to prepare for this. So my definition of witchcraft, let's just go with definition, it's a practice that has evolved from sort of a reverence for the earth, right? A reverence for the season, a reverence for the cycles, the moon, astrology, if you will, herbs, like herbal medicines, herbal tinctures, this kind of thing. And it's to me, it just felt like coming home, if you will. And I think it was 1993. I was living in the Middle East where you could not openly practice any form of religion other than Islam. But I was finding books in the summers when we would come to Edmonton. I would find books at the library, and mostly about herbology. Right. And it just sort of grew from there. And it's something I kept very close to me for a long time, not because I feared criticism or persecution from anybody I was close to, but there was something sort of inherently sacred about keeping it to myself, if you will. Yeah. So even now, so where are we, almost 30 years later, I would still consider myself a solitary practitioner, meaning that I tend to just do things on my own. I do love the opportunities to network with if I may, I'll just call it the pagan community in Edmonton. Right. There are so many paths, if you will. And I love the networking, and I love the markets, and I love the festivals, and I love, the circle gatherings that we have. Like it's wonderful to connect with people who practice different things and learn. So I certainly don't mind labeling myself as a witch, but I don't typically walk into a room and, the witch has a witch. Here's my witch or bad witch, this kind of thing, right? So, I mean, and then it probably has just nurtured that interest for me now that I live back in Canada, where we do have distinct seasons, right? In the Middle East, you really didn't. But here we do have distinct seasons. So if you think about the Wheel of the Year, which for a lot of pagans includes 8 Sabbats, and it marks sort of the changing of the seasons, of the harvests. May 1st was Beltane is probably the easiest way to describe it. And that's a fire festival. That's a fertility festival, right? The god and the goddess unite. And there is the Beltane Fair Society out of Scotland. And they are absolutely incredible. If you ever, I think on most social media, you'll find them as the Beltane Fair Society. Right. And they're elaborate. Like it's a production. Like Brandon would have to manage a production if he was there, Yeah. Like costumes and painting like faces and, but it's so ingrained and woven into the tapestry of Celtic lore and mythology. And I have a window right in front of me, in fact, and I'm watching this forest behind my house come into life. And that for me is more than just, finally the snow is gone. And like, this is about new life coming in and new opportunities, if you will. Right. So does that end
of the earth, like rebirthing of the earth? Yeah,
that's exactly what it is. So does that kind of, I talk way more than I mean to. So.
No, it's I actually really enjoy that because I love listening and learning. Because when we think about, if we go into the horror movie genre, if we go into just I'm just gonna say it, like the teenage perspective, or the perspective that maybe some of our parents or some in the more religious community, I guess, they would have that perspective of it. It's like demonology and people running around, the typical running around naked around the trees, and the whole, they have a whole different perspective of it. And it's funny because, being in this community, in the psychic medium type of community, we hear a lot about, I'm a witch, and it'll be like, okay. I worship
Brandon's like,
demon name, and they're like, you know what I mean? And it's just so commercialized, right? And just as a personal, so it's interesting. So as a personal story, back when I was really, developing my gifts, and I don't know, Brandon, if you ever ran across this, and you probably did to some degree too, Maura, but back when I was first developing my gifts and everything, or like expanding them, I guess is the best way, or learning more about them, how to be like, you have them, but you're not really projecting them at that point, to some degree. There were people that would be like, oh, you're a witch. And for me, I always went back. I always hated that word. I hated the word because for me, it brought me into the Salem witch trials and this and the black hats and the evil. And like, I was just like, I was so turned off by that whole thought process and that whole just perspective of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until really I met you and just, you know, more, I expanded more into the, I guess, the paranormal and supernatural community to some degree, that you start understanding, okay, this isn't, you know, the whole thing. And now if somebody says, well, you're a witch, I'm like, okay, you can call me that. I'm not a practicing pagan. I'm, you know, I am Christian, but whatever. I'm okay with that too. Like, there's no, I don't look at it as in that same, you know, I don't have that same outlook towards it anymore. But for a while there, I was very much like, it scared me because of the negative attention that gets, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking here too. You know, I came to spirituality from a science channel, a science background. So studying science and quantum physics is what opened me to spirituality. So before, you know, I was really open to any kind of consciousness other than, you know, my own self and my immediate family and surroundings, whatever. Whenever I would see the kids who were Wiccan or pagan or practicing witchcraft of some kind, to me, that was weird. And I'm like, I don't get it. These are like the weird kids. And ironically enough, there was a blend between theater and that whole Wiccan kind of idea. So it was all completely foreign to me. And it wasn't until I broke through in my own spiritual understanding that I started to get, oh, well, everything is connected, and you can absolutely use dandelion or cattails or something just as well as you could use ibuprofen in your, you know, your cabinet here. So for me, I think, you know, I have a perspective that a lot of people have related to in the past, like, oh, that's just a weird thing. You know, they're hippies of the earth. But once you start to really see that you're deeply ingrained and connected with each fiber that this earth has to offer, then you can start to see the genuine, the true magic in all of it.
Yeah, it's so true. You mentioned Wiccans, and there's kind of a myth. Let's go with myth.
Yeah.
That Wicca is this old religion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's not. 1951, Gerald Gardner. He was considered this crazy guy in England, and he had been inducted into a coven of witches, and out of it came Wicca. And great. You know, he was vilified for it, but he was also revered for it.
Right.
But like, witchcraft as a practice goes way, way back, right? You think about midwifery, right? Mm-hmm. And how women were kept out of practicing medicine, but women practiced medicine and mixed herbs and and this kind of thing in secret. Yeah. And then would midwife at a birth, and it was witchcraft. You made a baby come out of there, you know. It's that kind of like, there are a lot of misunderstandings, and within the broader sort of like witchcraft, like, we have Christian witches, we have Norse witches, we have Celtic witches, we have satanic witches, and it's not, none of it, as far as I've experienced, right? Because I don't want to speak to the, you know, the entire experience.
Absolutely, but right, because everybody's going to have a different perspective to some degree.
Right. I've never experienced sort of practices that are cruel or abusive. I've never.
Right.
In fact, you know, the worst part of it is that people are sharp with their words, and people are critical of each other. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's not witchcraft. That's not paganism.
Right.
That's human. But
vocabulary.
Right.
And I've seen that, like, on social media, where you get, you know, somebody saying something and it turns into a whole negative discussion about, you know, just the simplest things. And you're like, okay, you know, is this why it's getting like a bad reputation, or is this part of that, you know, negative connotation, right?
Yeah. There's, if I may, and I don't remember the name of the author off the top of my head, but if people are interested in gaining a little bit of insight, there's this fantastic book called Witches, Sluts, Feminists.
Oh, I love that. Okay.
Or it might be Witches, Feminists, Sluts. But anyways, it's 3 words that have been tossed at women since the beginning of time to vilify them.
Yeah.
And is the evolution of those words as they apply to women, and how women are starting to take it back, right? You have the slut walk, you have take back the night. Yeah. Feminists are becoming, we have lots of waves of feminism, if you will, but it's not a bad thing. And just like witches, not a bad thing. So that is, I can certainly take a moment to figure out who the author of that book is, because it's fantastic. So there's lots and lots of knowledge out there. And I think to dispel some of the fears that people have just about even hearing the word witch, or hearing the word pagan, or witchcraft. If you can absorb a little bit of knowledge, and as Brandon said, he had this breakthrough in the spirituality, right? In understanding the connection, that's huge. And that's sort of, I guess, what started to move that empath part of me, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm just going to tell a really, really quick story, if you're okay.
Yeah, of course.
So Kathy, you had sent me this fantastic guided meditation for an Akashic record, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
I know which one that is.
I think you probably do, right? And so I have this lovely backyard that looks out onto a forest, and I was sitting and I had my feet in a little kiddie pool, and I had trees over top of me, and it was this beautiful sunny day. So I laid back in a deck chair, and I listened, and I was going, and I was there, and I was at my cottage, right? There's this thatched roof cottage in the woods, and it was just amazing. And then all of a sudden it got super dark, and I was like, okay. And then there was this huge rumble of thunder that I realized was actually coming from above me. In that moment, the vision changed to my whole cottage was on fire, and I was running. I was right? Like, I don't even think I stopped to try and grab anything. I just ran. And so when I came back from that meditation, I thought, oh my God, like, I was being persecuted. And I sort of tried to connect that with parts of my, like, aspects of my personality right now that are deeply rooted in insecurity. Like, like I'm always defensive, or I'm always being persecuted. And fast forward about 2 years, and I went to a local witches market, and I stopped to talk to this woman who was making wire wrap trees.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right?
I think I see your stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we were just kind of talking, and then she sort of touched my hand, and I was like, okay, okay, consent and all that. But she sort of touched my hand, and then she stood up and she looked me right in the eyes, and she said, "You are a witch." And I said, okay, well, you could say that to most people in this room, it's a witch's market. But then she said to me, oh, and that time that your cottage was on fire, and I, when all the hair on the back of your neck just kind of stands up.
Oh my God.
And she's like, that time your cottage was on fire, you did that. And I went, what? She said, you were experimenting, and it went awry. And I was like, what? I never saw that. All I saw, like, rumble and thunder. My cottage was on fire. I was gone. And I said, so I wasn't, like, that wasn't somebody else.
Yeah.
And she sort of gave me this whole new perspective that I actually accidentally sabotaged my own work.
Wow.
Right. So that was really, really eye-opening for me.
So when you had that experience, did a lot of things, okay, like when you have that given to you, okay, like this insight, right? Do you then look at other things that maybe sort of went awry, and you look at it and go, do you look at it with new eyes now and kind of go, I wonder if I inadvertently, did something like that, right?
Yeah, totally.
The one thing, bringing up that Akashic meditation, I mean, I had done it and I had sent it to Moira, and it was interesting because when I had mine, the very first thing that I had seen was me in a hut creating with like herbs, and I was mixing things together and creating, I knew I was making medicine. And it was interesting because I knew that I had a young boy here, but it wasn't my child. I was teaching him how to do, and it was like he was like the son of, how it goes so fast, like the meditate, like they're like that, but it seems to go on, like you get the whole story, but it's like in seconds, right? And I could tell that he was the son of the head of the community, who was a woman. So this was way back. This would have been way, way back when women were actually leaders of communities, right? And she was like the head, honcho, I guess, but it was a grass hut and the whole bit. And I remember that in my meditation, she did not like that I was teaching her son this stuff, and they stoned me to death. And it was funny because as soon as I had that meditation come through, when I woke up, there was a few other things that happened, but as soon as I woke up, I went, this explains how I take things and how I'm not sometimes as authentic with, things as I had wanted to be, or I was always scared to maybe say my piece or speak my mind or whatever it was. And I tell you, that changed everything. I was like, okay, that's from there. And boom, well, as you guys know, I'm very open, outspoken. But funny enough,
I feel like I have to do that Akashic record meditation.
Yeah. Well, here's the interesting thing. So a few years later, I was telling somebody about the meditation, but I didn't tell them about the child. I just gave it was a very basic breakdown, right? And all of a sudden he said, my mother didn't like you and she got you stoned to death. And I went, what? Like, what? And it was like, I literally just had this thought in my mind. Like, it was like, I could literally see it, they said. And I went, oh my God. Ooh. So this is how powerful those Akashic meditations can truly be. Like, they bring out a lot. It's interesting though, because as you're talking about it, as Brandon has said, being connected to the earth and all of this, I was just thinking, as I was listening to the two of you, I was like, when we think about it, the law of attraction is very much like that, because we talk about energy, we talk about putting it out into the universe, we talk about grounding, we talk about, letting the earth, we're all connected, that, we're connected to the earth, we're connected to each soul. And it's funny how people can persecute something like witchcraft when it's really parallel to so many other genres.
I had a very intense experience this week, and it was quite out of body, and it was showing me all of I was literally in class listening to the instructor, and I'm just gone out of body. I see this divine matrix of how everything is connected and all these sorts of whatever. But I feel like what you're saying is true, Kathy, that like there is some idea of this law of attraction. There does seem to be some ultimate force binding everything together, but to access it, we have so many different modalities to do that. And I think the right. common denominator is belief. Belief isn't just child's play. It is a tool. It is a power that you use with the consciousness. And so when you can wrap that, and this is where I want to relate it to Maura here, when you can relate that to working with the physical, with the earth, with what we can see outside, I think it really develops this beautiful symbiotic relationship with physical reality that we still have to deal with. We still have a physical body. We still have to, work with it, even if we're, a million fan person in spirit or astral, whatever it is, you know what I mean? Like you can have this whole other life in some other dimension that you're currently working with, but still have to deal with this body in some way. And that's why I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, witchcraft kind of ties a lot of that together, working with the body, working with maybe certain spells or again, tinctures, herbs, different uses. That's where my mind immediately goes, is working with the earth.
You are correct.
Okay.
At least and again, this is one of those, we're talking about such a diverse
right
system of beliefs, but what you're saying totally resonates with me. So
it seems like the law of attraction, like you said, Kathy, you know, it does fit, I think, into all these different modalities. You know, even if we're speaking about, with my background with studying quantum physics, it's like, oh, okay, you know, there's this realm of possibility behind me. Nothing is currently existing until I turn around and my observation creates it. But yet, you know, I'm going to attract whatever I'm constantly repeating. And again, I think belief is at its core. It's at its core component for everything.
I love that.
That out-of-body experience was crazy. Let me tell you, I'm literally just trying to mind my own business, sitting in class, and then all of a sudden, it's just like I'm seeing. Okay, this is gonna be really weird. Everybody as worms. Okay, so take the nervous system, the brain, all the little, you know, nerve endings, and the spine, and we're just a little worm. That's all we are these electrical impulses firing and controlling the body. Oh, it was creeping me out. And that's where our consciousness can travel through those nerve endings. And I'm like, oh my God, I need to learn about the contracts of real estate. I'm trying to learn the legal and law, and I'm out of my body here. I'm like, oh boy. Ironically, that was the highest test score I got, though. Isn't that weird?
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
Good for you.
And do you find, like, so you were in the middle of one of your courses for real estate.
Middle of a lecture, yeah.
And do you find there's any sort of synchronicity in kind of the type of situation you're in when you have these experiences?
Always, honestly. So I usually don't act on something unless it has been synchronized already. Okay. So if I'm taking an action, it has been brought to me by way of intuition or some kind of heart pull or coincidence, whatever it may be. So yeah, it does happen to me often because I do actively partake in making those decisions. So with witchcraft, would you say that it's more of a creating your reality or altering it or manipulating it, or what does it do to your kind of everyday? And to follow up, is there something simple that most people do that is kind of witchcraft that they wouldn't have thought it was? Like maybe it's something as simple as, you know, the ritual of brushing teeth or something like that. Like how
exactly what I was going to say.
Simple can it be?
Like you think about just standing in the morning, stirring your coffee. Most people will stir clockwise, right? Yeah. And conjuring is clockwise.
What's counterclockwise? Because I think about
Widdershins, right? So that would be to away.
What if you do a zigzag?
I don't know, but I mean, I think we should try. Right? Let's experiment.
It's so silly. It's so silly. I've actively thought about this. So if I'm massaging a part of my body and I'm like, oh, I really need this pain to be relieved, and I'll do it in a clockwise motion, I'm like, maybe I'm not supposed to do it this way. Maybe I'm supposed to go backward and do it the other way. So I never know which is the right way for whatever I'm, you know, engaged in. So I do both just to be safe.
I think for that you would go instinctual.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Right? Because I know, like, when you're rubbing your stomach, it is supposed to be clockwise.
Yep.
Because counterclockwise is
digest.
Can actually, because the clockwise will help with digestion. It will help move things around.
Mm-hmm.
Counterclockwise will actually bind you.
It's even very soothing just doing it right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right? Like it has a soothing feeling to it immediately.
Does. It really does.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Brandon, that was a really, I love the complexity of your question, right? Because you mentioned creating, altering, manipulating, right? Which I think on a daily basis, we all practice. Negative connotations aside, on a daily basis, we all practice. And it's when you flip an intent in your mind as you're doing them, that they become like, we put things into action. Right. So, I mean, I struggle with the word manifestation right now as it is, because it's all over Instagram. It's all over Pinterest. Manifest.
It's become such norm words, like normal words, but it doesn't have the true meaning of what it could be, like, or what it is supposed to be, right? Like to manifest this, manifest that, instead of actually going into the actual practice of it.
Yeah.
I'd rather hear that regularly than, like, F bitches get money, or,
know. True. I think there's been some dilution, right?
Yes,
and there's of course things about my experience in the witchcraft community that have like, I've observed a lot of divisive behaviors. I've observed a lot of clashes based on, well, that's not the right way to hold your broom. And, it's like, is there a right way? Is there a wrong way? Right? Like, I'm going to listen to the person who's flying around a broom in the field more than I'm going to listen to, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't, the divisive things that I'm seeing right now. And you have a lot of people who are considered bloodline witches, if you will. Who, however they're able to do it, are able to trace back this lineage and say, my great grandmother, 87 times removed, practiced witchcraft in Ireland or England. And there's a lot of sort of nobody likes baby witches. People, there's negative connotations to being a baby witch, and it, we all started as babies. So my feeling is that as a community, we need to be sort of bringing in the people who are interested in it, and giving them a place to start, and giving them a place of, give them a foundation. Like, the first time I reached out to somebody using a particular community-based chat on the internet here in Edmonton, I emailed her and I sort of explained my background, and I said, I'm very interested in connecting with people who may have a similar spiritual path. And her response to me was, well, for somebody who's been practicing so long, why are you bothering me?
Whoa.
Like, I don't even remember. The response was just it was so cruel, and I thought, who are you? I mean, of course, I never figured out what their name was. It was a very sort of vague email address. And I just thought, if that is what a big part of my witchcraft path is teaching. Right now, I don't put myself out there as somebody who will, come to me and I'll teach you. But if somebody, like my daughter's friend, is very interested in witchcraft right now, and I said, just ask your parents if they're okay with it. But I'd love to, like, here are some books I think you should read, this kind of thing. I think we need to teach and not be threatened by, like, okay, so I started in 1993, but I may be no further in my studies and my practice than somebody who started 7 years ago, because my life has been different. My life path has been different. I've sort of gone different ways and strayed. There was a time where I was just so discouraged by what I was experiencing in the city that I was just like, like, it's not worth it. Right? Like, you don't want to be the person on the pulpit yelling, or the soapbox, if you will, yelling about, everybody love each other. And that's what witchcraft is. No. Like, I don't want that, but I don't want, like, if somebody asks you a question, a little answer is nice. Yeah. I'm sorry, I don't have that answer, but I know of somebody who does. Yeah. And I'm not threatening you. My knowledge doesn't threaten yours. My knowledge may amplify yours, and may we can build knowledge together, right? So I do find that sort of the negative side of it is just that people feel very threatened.
Do you feel that sort of threatened energy comes from many years of, finger pointing, persecution, and misunderstanding. And so there has to be some kind of guard up in some ways. Or
can I answer that from my perspective just for a second? Because Moira and I have both dealt with this in the paranormal community.
I've never been called a witch.
Very, very, and it was very personal, like a very personal attack against me at one point. And what and then Moira's perspective, but just as my perspective of that is, I found a lot of it was jealousy, unfortunately, or that you've created something that somebody is trying to ride your back on. And because of you've already created something, they're going to ride that back. And in order for them to get noticed, because there perhaps maybe a lack of originality within what they're trying to create, it turns into something very negative and can be thrown at you very personally. And that was one of the things that I did encounter in there. And it was horrible. There was a horrible persecution, I guess, is the best way to say it. And it was a very, very personal attack, simply because the person that started the attacking really didn't have the originality and really didn't have unfortunately, not to be mean, but they didn't have the talent to create what I had already created.
Yeah. I think, Brendan, my response to your question is very different now than it would have been at the time that I was really experiencing that. That's going on more than 10 years ago. And so I like to think that I've developed as a person. And my biological mother actually gave me the best sort of reference point for how to process somebody who is, pointing fingers and thus, they turn around and start pointing fingers at me. She said to me, you have to determine if a person is operating from a place of self or a place of ego. And I was like, whoa, and I've carried that with me. That I want to say that was probably 5 or 6 years ago that she said that to me now. And I've carried that with me. And so when people are pointing fingers and persecuting each other and in turn they turn around and become abusive almost, and really sort of closed off, I think, okay, that's your ego talking. That's your ego responding to perhaps a question or a misinterpretation of what you do that somebody decided to say, oh, well, that's what you do. And, don't operate from a place of ego if you can help it. I think we all, to some extent, fall back on.
Ego it's not necessarily bad. It's our individuality, right? It's okay to be an individual because here we are in a body. You have no choice but to be individual. It's not like we're all conjoined twins or one blob of, many beings. So we still have to, there's healthy ego, of course, and then there's unhealthy ego. And I think that's the finesse. That's the real challenge, I think, of being human is, like you said, figuring out where you're operating from. Where is that area? And who do you want to be? Who do you want to be today?
I don't know. And I think
I love that. Sorry, that was what he said. That was really good. I love that.
It was so good, right? Like, what do you want to be? And it's, for me, it's become about just being in a moment and recognizing that I'm not the same person I was yesterday. And I'm probably not going to be the same person tomorrow. And so connecting genuine, like the positive ego with self, maybe that'll get rid of my imposter syndrome. I don't know. It's just.
Well, I will say that I completely understand and relate to that syndrome, that idea. I don't know if it would have been any kind of diagnosis. For me, it's something that I can relate to over long periods of time, but I've definitely known the feeling. And I will say that part of what helped me overcome that is taking the different parts of myself, there are several or many different parts, and having them talk together as if they were separate entities. And when they communicate, they share insights with each other and different perspectives, and then they start to work together, just like a coworker would, or maybe family members, siblings. It really has been monumental through my hypnotherapy training, learning how to have that gestalt and that back and forth that kind of helped me overcome that. Oh, you can't do this. Oh, well, which part of me is saying that right now? Because there is a part of me that believes it. And there's a part of me that believes I can. So I think maybe if you have those moments and you're good at your visualizations or meditations, that can be really beneficial for you and anybody else, that's listening. There are parts of yourself that believe and don't believe.
Yeah, isn't that? I love that. I love that. Like what you just said. I think that's actually brilliant, because we've talked about before on the show is taking that third party view, like take a step back and imagine, the way something is playing out. What can you see within yourself? What can you see with that other person or other people that were involved? And, it's allowing that sometimes, that forgiveness, right? Not only towards the other person, but when we start to actually look at our role as a third party, we're not taking it on a personal level. And then we can put this new perspective towards it. And we go, okay, I could see how this person would maybe take this reaction or however it is. And then that really allows a lot of forgiveness to come in from not only towards yourself, but the other parties involved. And it allows just a new outlook towards a new insight towards all of it. And it does a lot of clearing and healing, really. So I love the way.
What do you do if you're not willing to forgive somebody?
That's, that's okay. It depends on, obviously, there's people that hang on to things that are, that is pure ego. And then there's people that have done horrible things because of their own self-indulgence, evilness, really wretched personalities. Let's just say that.
You know who I'm talking about.
I do. And I think here's the thing though, but when you go into that third party perspective, what you can also do is you can, to some degree, play another role and maybe say exactly what it is that you want to say to that person. Allow how you would have possibly reacted, but without blame towards yourself and without, I wish I had done that. No, it's just allowing yourself to play it's like a dimensional role. Okay, if I was in another dimension, this is how I would have handled that. Okay, that I'm in this dimension, I'm just going to let that go. But it does help soothe and heal a little bit, possibly not completely. I had told Brandon about this dream one time. So I had this dream, and I found that this, for me personally, was extremely healing. I had this dream where I walked into a room and the whole floor was lava. Everything was fire. Everything was like, I don't know, like walking into a volcano. And I literally heard, for me, it was God saying, burn it down, burn it. Just burn whatever is in your soul, burn it the F away. I'm giving you that power. And for me, it was things and people that I needed a lot of healing for myself in order to move forward. It wasn't so much that I could do anything about their role in anything, but literally it was like as if I had just fire coming right out of my mouth and I could just burn the hell right out of them, literally. And I just kept doing it and kept doing it. And if they reappeared what is that? All of a sudden reappeared, I guess, I burned them again until I actually started to really feel better. And it probably lasted a good 15, 20 minutes of me just like constantly like, and it was so cleansing. It was so cleansing. It wasn't completely healing, but it was cleansing. Like, you know what I mean? For a while, until it started coming up again. Then I just went and did it again, and it really helped.
I think that's the beautiful part about fire. So, Maura, what in witchcraft do you do with fire? What are the things that, I don't know, that it's kind of known for? Speak to me as if I've never really done anything with witchcraft. Obviously, I think there's an importance on the elements, right? The 4 elements. So what would fire, what is it used for? Is there ritual? Is there obviously alchemical or chemical alterations? You know what I mean? Yeah, shed some. I'm interested. Shed some light on this.
Well, I'll speak to what I do with fire in my own practice.
Mm-hmm.
So you light a fire. So for example, I have what I call the burning bowl ritual, which I typically like to do on a new moon. It looks like you might know about this.
Right on a full moon.
Okay. Right?
Is that okay? Is that normal?
100%.
Okay.
100%. New moon for me is a time when we're creative, and full moon for me is a time when I'm sort of like, okay, I'm going to get rid of this. But I have this little terracotta pot, and I write stuff on bay leaves. Right? Like I use bay leaves, and so sometimes it's a name, sometimes it's a part of me that I a sort of a flaw, if you will, right? And I burn it. And so I'm banishing, I'm cleansing. And then the smoke from that, of course, moves into the element of air,
right?
Which you get things like the air moves things, like the water moves things, but it sort of pushes things away. It can also bring things back to you. That's where I use fire in my, and I do like candle magic. I think candle magic is a wonderful sort of a wonderful practice to bring things into your life.
I've heard of this. What, in simple terms here, what exactly are you doing with candle magic?
So for me, I'll say I find because there's color correspondences, if you will, which off the top of my head, I'm sorry, I didn't make.
But like green is one thing, red
is like
blue.
Money,
right.
Red is like passion, this kind of thing, right? So you might take like a pillar candle, if you will, and you might have created a sigil, which is like a little symbol that often people create for themselves, and it's typically to do with the letters of a word that describes what they're trying to do, and it's just the way you form the letters, all on top of each other. And you'll find that there's kind of a sigil in there. There's kind of comes a shape, if you will. And you might carve that into your candle, right? So if you want money, you might have, created a sigil for abundance, or you might have created a sigil, right? Carve it into your candle because it's something you're making. And then sometimes you will anoint the candles. So you might discover a blend of essential oils that you really like, or, just a single oil, and you'll anoint that candle. And then you can decide for yourself, okay, so I want this to sort of, we're going to use the word manifest, but I want this to manifest over, let's say, 7 days. So you're going to burn that candle at a specific time or for a specific duration of time every day for 7 days. This is my practice, right?
Right.
And so by the time that candle is done, you start to notice, okay, so there's a little bit more of this coming in. There's a little bit more of this coming in. So it's not like like I can open the front door and there's a pot of gold. But it's you do have to start. I mean, gratitude is another really big part of all of these, right? So even if it's just, all of a sudden, whoa, I just got a check in the mail for $150. I was not expecting that. It's not. What kind of difference is that going to make to most people nowadays? Not a lot, but
that
might mean that instead of buying the Costco brand of toilet paper, I'm going to buy the Charmin brand. And make the difference in a little bit of comfort, if you will.
Yeah.
Right. So there's also the practice of jumping over the fire, right? To sort of you jump over a fire and you're leaving things behind, right? Like you'll often get that.
Do you actually do that? What would you use?
Just jump over the fire. Take a running jump, but
Wait, you have to take a running jump.
Jump over the fire. There's a wonderful trilogy on the National Film Board of Canada website. You can also find it on YouTube. The director producer's name is Donna Reed with an E, Reade. And she has Goddess Remembered, The Burning Times, and the third one, I believe, is something about a circle. And it's very ecologically focused, that third one. But if you watch Goddess Remembered and The Burning Times, she shows you some of these practices of jumping over a fire, and often that happens at a Sabbat celebration, if you will. So Sabbats, of course, are the 8 points on the wheel, and then Esbats, like ESBAT, that's to do with the moon, right? So you bring fire in to create energy, to burn things, as Brandon was saying, the cleansing, this kind of thing, right? So does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, I would love to go into every other element, but I do have more pointed questions with you and your work and how this kind of ties in. So I have been, just to kind of throw a little relatability, I've been to Stratford, and I went there it was like a whole week or something of just a lot of productions. And I saw some kind of Alice in Wonderland at this theater. I can't remember where it was. Then I saw, it was some Shakespeare
Midsummer Night's Dream,
yes. And I saw that at that big theater. I can't remember what that was either. I'm so sorry. But it was like one of the few times that I've been to Canada, and I was working with a director up there, and he was taking me to theater and seeing stage shows and stuff. And the one thing that I remembered back when I had done, a musical back in grade school, is that there is this very clear feeling of a tight energy when you're with a cast. And so I think as you've become more professional, you learn to work your part, and you can probably be interchangeable with all sorts of different teams and crew. So what I'm curious about is, where does it kind of cross over? Is there any crossover with your own personal practice and the work that you do? And are there other people that join in that with you on the crews or cast that you even work with?
That is a fantastic question.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, that's so good, Brandon. And I think if we're talking about crossover, it's not so much that I bring the practice to the production, but in practicing rituals myself, right? Like even just as we were saying, like that morning coffee, and I might be like, okay, I hope all the actors are on time today, anything to sort of move a performance forward. By putting myself in a space where I have already grounded, where I may become sort of an anchor for the many, many moving parts of the production. I actually had a pretty traumatic injury in 2015. So I've stayed off the stage and done a lot of stage managing. Has kind of been my thing. So to be sort of that center, right? So I would say that's probably where there's a bit of crossover. Yeah.
I swear sometimes, watching certain things, certain performances, the impact that it has, it feels almost magical. You know what I mean? When you see something so beautiful, or you're asking like how they did that. And I'm not talking about stage magic. I'm talking about these components where pieces of either people or sets or something come together, and you're like, oh my gosh, how did they do that? Or how did they make me feel this? It feels viscerally magical. And I, being more sensitive, I think maybe a lot of other empaths can relate to it. When they're watching something they see, they're like, oh my gosh, it's like really pulling me. It's like when the opera singer hits that high C, and you're just like, oh my god.
For me, it's a parade. I don't know what it is about a parade.
Oh yeah.
But when I see the parade happening, or the bagpipes, or even when people come together to sing "O Canada,"
Mm-hmm.
I immediately start bawling, simply because it is all of that. It's all of those souls connecting for that few minutes, or that few moments in time, and they're all spreading some sort of feeling of love, and that's where I lose.
They're coming together. When you come together, magic happens.
I'm just trying to find the name of a show that I was told to watch. And I feel so bad that I don't remember the name of it. But
like a series.
It's just a single production, actually, that was filmed, and I want to say that we had it up here on Amazon Prime.
Oh.
Oh my goodness. And I got into a whole conversation with my friend about it. So he's this incredibly handsome actor, and he's in front of a wall that's wooden, and it's got sort of windows in it. And he's telling the stories of how he learned to perform magic. And he brings the audience in, and he has this huge book right? Oh yeah. Ooh. I mean, I really need to figure out what the name of this is, because
I'm interested. That sounds right.
His name is Derek Delgadio. It's called In and of Itself. And it will absolutely leave you with chills.
Oh my gosh. I am literally getting the chills, and I barely know anything about it.
What is it? In and
of Itself.
So it is on Hulu, it looks like.
Okay. I and if we can, Brandon and Kathy both, I would love to hear your experiences with this show, because as psychics, as empaths, as mediums, like there is something, like, I mean, I was just watching it on a TV in my living room, and I was just like, I was vibrating.
Oh, reading the synopsis is like...
And it's so very rare that you actually have that experience, especially when it comes to primetime TV or,
And by the time, I think, like, by the time it may, I don't know if the pandemic halted it or if it was finished, he performed this show 522 times.
Wow.
And he is interact with the audience. There's a book that he gives an audience member. He's like, okay, you don't get to come. You're not watching the end of the show. Take the book, go. You're going to write something in it tonight.
That's so cool.
And then they come back the following night and they get to see the end of the show. And he brings people up on stage and he hands them letters. And so you see them reading these letters to them, like they're to them, from people in their lives. And it's just, they're in tears. Like,
that sounds incredible.
Yeah. I highly recommend it.
I absolutely envisioned and imagined myself, if I were to ever be on stage, I would want it to be extremely personal in that way. And also, magical. Because when I was stumbling on my path and I was hypnotizing people and doing like a little bit of stage hypnosis, doing it in the college, whatever. And I hypnotized somebody and opened up their psychic abilities, and something happened and it just blew my mind wide open. And I'm like, whoa, there's something to this. Like there's some kind of magic that can happen on stage. And what you've suggested here sounds exactly like what I was inspired by back then. So I'm really excited for this thing.
Yeah. And it left me in a puddle.
Oh.
You know what I'm doing tonight.
Yep. And I want to know. If you experience even.
We should just have a live show of us watching a meta watch party. Yeah.
That would be so cool.
It is so. I mean, do you know what's funny? I don't know. I want to say it was about 2 months ago that I watched it. Yeah. I'm not sure I'm ready to watch it again.
Is that right away?
It is so powerful.
Yeah.
I'm getting the chills every time.
Yeah. No, I know.
Every time you say it. Wow.
Yeah. There's just so much. And he's so beautiful, like just as a person. Mm-hmm. And as somebody who in the theater industry, there was a screen in between this guy and myself. And I was like, oh man, like I felt him. I felt him on that couch. Like I was like, I could stage manage this guy, or I could direct this guy, or, but I could never be opposite him.
Is there a difference between that kind of magic that somebody has on stage versus the practical idea of magic that we kind of associate more towards, being the normal magic? Is there a difference?
The K. Put a K on the end. Yep. So magic with a K, for me, as I have come to understand it, is typically what we've been talking about. It can be associated with witchcraft. It can be associated with, these exceptionally tangible feelings that you get from watching something. Take the C off of it, and it's something very performative. It's something very, it's spectacular. It might, it's street magic, if you will, So I feel like maybe that's where my difference in it is.
Yeah. What a beautiful way to explain it. I love that.
I love wordplay. I mean, that's probably the most magic I've done is playing around with words and moving them around in different ways. And being, as you had mentioned earlier, sometimes very direct is a beautiful thing. And especially if you're doing some kind of repetitive, either spell work, ritual work, or manifesting work, if you will.
Yes,
that wordplay can really be helpful. It goes as simple as, I don't want to get speeding tickets anymore, to I drive safe and...
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And that is right there, the law of attraction, but also the true manifestation, right? So, or parts of manifestation. Let's say parts of.
Well, very cool. I definitely look forward to reporting back to you after we watch this.
I would love that.
And talking about it. So maybe you have to come on again.
Oh, please. I would love to. Yeah.
Actually, it would be really cool to be able to do a show after we do watch it, because I know I'm going to be. This is what I'm doing tonight, and I already know that. If you're willing to come back in a couple of weeks,
absolutely.
It would be truly I know you have to go, because I know you have Mother's Day plans, and I'm sorry for even keeping you for this long.
It's been wonderful.
I can't even tell you what a pleasure it is to have you on our show.
Thank you.
The energy has been great. I can feel our spirits working together. It's been beautiful. Absolutely.
I'm sitting back here, and I was watching the two of you as you talk, and it's sometimes it's kind of nice, like when you can just be absorbed into the energy of other people and just listen, and you're like, I just love this. It's like, oh, I get to speak. Wait a minute. No, I don't want it. I just want to listen and enjoy and be overwhelmed and taken in, and just have that energy, coming into you, right? And it's just been such an absolute honor to have you here. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
And for everybody watching, again, remember to join us next Sunday for another interview. And don't forget our Wednesday show at 6:00 p.m. where we do readings, where we have interactive chat with people. And Brandon, people can reach you at
thedreamteacher.com. Set up with me there, book an appointment, shoot me a message. My schedule's a little booked up right now, so if you need something specific, shoot me a message. No problem getting in touch with you as soon as possible.
I'm going to book with you. I'm so excited.
And Moira, where can people, they can reach you at listen to the podcast at the Unrefined Mettle. Is that correct?
Yep.
We have it in the chat box here, but I'm going to add it to the description box too. So
I'll give you also, I'm just putting it in the chat here. If anybody watching has questions or wants, any sort of, after hearing about a little bit about witchcraft today, if there were, needing some clarification or wanting some You know, if they want to talk, they can reach me at wildwitchgrimoire@gmail.com.
Perfect. I'm just going
and that's
to
just
that.
It's just for anybody who wants to connect. So
that's beautiful. Thank you.
I also put your Facebook page in the group chat as well, if that's okay, for the Unrefined Metals.
Oh yeah, sure. I can totally do that.
Perfect.
I already put it in there. I got you.
Oh, you did? Oh,
yeah, you put it in there already.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, thank you. Yeah. We're ramping up to starting to produce again. We've both been vaccinated, so we're ready to sort of get back to it. So yeah.
Beautiful. I'm looking forward to listening to. I actually really enjoyed listening to the Unrefined Metal back before all the COVID days and everything like that. So it was such a good podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. And if anyone wants to book a personal reading with me, they can reach me at oracleintuitions.com. We hope to see you all next week. We hope to see you all on Wednesday. Moira, I am so grateful for you coming on, and I'm so looking forward to having you on again at some point.
Thank you. Sorry, Brandon, I do the same thing.
All the time. It's just the best way.
Yeah.
Thank you, Maura.
Thanks, everybody.